Welcome to the Career Jiu-Jitsu podcast, where we connect the art of Jiu-Jitsu with your career. Our mission is to empower and inspire you with engaging conversations and valuable insights from people just like you who benefit from the shared relationship between your workplace and the art of Jiu-Jitsu, leading you to a more fulfilling and successful life. Hello and welcome to the Career Jiu-Jitsu podcast. Today we are so excited to be joined from across the world. We have Gino Periera here with us today. Gino is the owner and head coach of Balance Jiu-Jitsu in Brisbane, Australia. So this is our first podcast of having somebody from all the way across the world. So this is really exciting for us as podcasters here, right, Frank?
Absolutely. This is amazing to go global, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then also Gino is a Show Your Role ambassador. So he's a successful competitor in BJJ. And he's also has gotten involved in CLA, which is constraint-led approach to training methods. So he will explain a little more in detail of what this is, but it is fascinating stuff. It's been around for a long time. And Gino is going to explain more about that and make its connection with Jiu-Jitsu, of course. And then we can also tap into some stuff about about how it can apply to our workplace and our career too. So, Frank, welcome aboard.
Yes. Gino, thanks so much for joining us. We are very grateful for your time here. And there's so much to unpack with your experience in CLA, in Jiu-Jitsu, owning your own gym. There's so much here. So thanks so much for joining us today. And I guess we'll get it kicked off with just tell our listeners a little bit about how you got started in Jiu-Jitsu, where the journey began, what you liked about it, what attracted you to it, and what kept you going.
Well, firstly, guys, thanks for having me. Very excited to be able to speak with you. Any opportunity to talk about grappling, coaching, I'm always all about it. The more opportunities I get to talk about it, the better I get at talking about it. So I appreciate you both for that. Where I started, I started 2009. I remember the email I first sent to the first gym I approached. All I said was, hey guys, I want to be a UFC fighter. Can I come and train? And the amount of emails they must have got back then saying those exact same words, it boggles the mind. So I went down to a gym. I trained to be a fighter. Quickly realized that I was not wanting to be a fighter. It was not cut out. I was not cut out for it. You have to be a different breed to be a fighter. Getting punched, kicked, all those things, not for me. But I did very much fall in love with the grappling side of it. And I just continued going from there ever since.
So you went from being a student in your journey to somehow converting yourself to getting your black belt and opening your own gym. Tell us a little bit about that story.
Yeah, I think it's the same as most people's journeys. I think the difference for me was very, very early on, I recognized that this is what I wanted to do with my life. So I might have been like a 3-stripe white belt. And I knew pretty much straight away, like, this is what I want to do. I've got a background. I grew up in a very religious household. So I was very involved in churches and working with youths and speaking to the public and speaking to big groups of people and trying to influence people's lives and stuff like this. And all those experiences really, really did help shape me and prepare me to do what I do now. It just so happened that those skills that I picked up along the way directly apply to what I do right now, which is as a grappling coach and someone who's part of it or leads a community with my wife. Those skills directly apply. So I just got very, very fortunate.
Wow. So in your journey, can you tell us where you tell us a little bit about CLA, what it means, what its philosophy is, how you found it, and how you implement it?
Absolutely. This is something I'm very, very passionate about. Essentially, CLA is a tool. It's a tool in the toolbox of ecological dynamics. And ecological dynamics, with the world's quickest explanation, is it's a theoretical framework and basically in how we see and act in the world. So it's a combination of ecological psychology and then dynamical systems theory. And those two things kind of combine together. And it's like, that's just the way that we see and act in the world. That's a framework based in that. The CLA is just a tool that we use to apply to different different sports in a coaching aspect. How I discovered that is, I was a coach for a while, and I had a bit of a realization as I was going to teach another class, and I was like, I had a process, right? I had a process where I would research, let's say just any given technique. I would research that for a while, and then I would spend a few weeks trying to use said technique in my own training room, just so I felt like I had enough of a base of knowledge that I could share it competently. And then I would bring it to the room. And that was a cycle that I was just like, for years, I was doing that. And so I came to a point, I remember driving to the gym one day, and I was like, am I going to do this forever? Am I just going to just bring novelty to the room? Here's a new technique. Here's a new thing for you guys to learn. Is that all my role is? At what point am I actually teaching them anything? And at what point what do I actually know? So it drove me down a rabbit hole. So then I started listening to some stuff. I discovered Greg Souders. That's my coach now, Coach Greg, and through some podcasts, and initially hated what I was hearing because it was so just completely different to what we know or what I had been taught coming up, that it took me a little while just to kind of like start to understand what it was, and then reaching out to him, and then reaching out to a bunch of other coaches. And then a few years later, here we are. Essentially, what the difference is that ecological dynamics, we believe that information it's direct. Okay. So perception is direct. What that means is the old style of thinking, information processing style of thinking, was that we would see and we would gather information, and we would take all that information and we would put it in our brain. And then our brain would like decipher what to do with that information, and then send the information and out to our body. And we would use that information to act in the world. The difference is we believe in direct perception. So what that means is the brain doesn't have to make a mental model. There's other aspects of our body which perceive live in the moment. And as we act live in the moment, that changes that relation. That is an ongoing relationship, direct perception. I perceive, or I see, and I feel, and I act, and then that means seeing and acting. Those two things are continuously working in relationship with each other. And we try as much as we possible to keep that perception and action relationship smashed together the whole time. So there's no need necessarily to like get a bunch of information stored in here and then act. That's a very, 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 very quick and rough explanation in terms of like how we see and how we act in the world based in that theoretical framework of ecological. We can go further into that. We can go further back from that, but that's like a very, very, very rough explanation.
Yeah, that is amazing, Gino. I really appreciate you opening my eyes to what this is, because I got a degree in physical education. I have a bachelor's degree in physical education, and I was a phys ed teacher for 10 years. So I remembered hearing something about it. So when we started talking before the podcast, I looked it up and I was like, wait, I do remember this guy. So a professor from Penn State, his name was Professor Newell, right? And Professor Newell developed this motor learning theory. And then that's where it started, right? So I remember hearing about that when I was in college. So when I read it, I was like, oh my gosh, I remember this guy. Because a lot of the physical education lessons, the lesson plans that I did, I really tried to keep those theories in mind. I tried to put constraints on certain things to teach sports. And then, so I did that a lot as a PE teacher. So I respect what this is and what it's all about. So can you, for our listeners a little bit, can you explain a little bit of how, like a little more detail in terms of how this applies in BJJ? So I know that this is a thing that is very popular in professional sports. There's a lot of professional athletes that are trained by performance coaches that are trained in CLA. So can you explain a little bit about how you apply it in jiu-jitsu for our listeners? Because a lot of our listeners do jiu-jitsu. So it'd be great for them to hear your perspective on that.
I think the easiest way to relate it to grappling is, as we come up, we learn, especially the traditional way that we're mostly taught, where you come, you do a warm up, we do some shrimps up and down the mat, we do some star jumps, and then the instructor will show us a move. We'll go and practice those moves. How it differs is, firstly, all the work that we do is live work. So we don't spend any time in a practice session doing anything that's not against live resistance with a live partner. So firstly, there's no wasted time in doing like exercises to warm the body up. We get straight into work 100% of the time with a partner. Secondly, we don't show any technique. So I don't even necessarily believe in the idea of a technique. A technique is more like a moment in time, if that makes sense. So just say if we think about like your 6-step armbar from the closed guard. That's like traditionally, you're on the bottom in closed guard, you pull the elbow to the center, you move your hips, you cover the head with your leg, and then you extend your hips to finish the armbar. That's a pretty classic fundamental move. I've only hit one in my entire jiu-jitsu career, classically speaking. So it's not that fundamental. That is something that you might show. Instead, what we would do is we don't show any techniques, but we might set them up in different alignments to help them, give them an experience of what that armbar could feel like, what it should feel like in application. And then we would like set them up in different alignments to like, okay, you're pretty close to this spot now. You know what you require. Hips to shoulder connection. You need to require a grip at the end of the lever. Now you're just going to try to keep those two connections and try to extend to make your partner tap. It's all essentially trying to give people an experience and have them working live straight away. So there's no wasted time and like dead pattern drilling, nothing against it, but I just feel like there's better ways to do things. There's no wasted time in dealing with the body. That's like, you get partners who they don't know how to be a drilling partner yet and they're kind of falling all over. It doesn't really make sense. Doesn't feel how it's actually going to feel when you do it live. We would just set people up in different positions and alignments to help them experience these things and learn as they go. So
And they
typically,
start that right from day one. Like a total noob in your class is just going to start with the live training. Like, let's go. This is what your guard. This is what we mean with guard. You're going to start in guard, and you're going to try to escape with these basic guidelines. So right off the bat,
100%. So we want to give them an experience, right? The first thing that they don't know anything from anything. So the first thing they need to experience is like, some people have never been grabbed before. There's some people have never had someone grab them with their own two hands. We've had people have like emotional experiences because someone grabbed their wrist with a 2-on-1 grip and their job was like, don't let them grab your wrist. And it was so confronting to have someone grab you that people haven't experienced if you're talking about a day one beginner, they haven't experienced any of these things. So what we try to do is give them an experience, let them feel something, and then we'll start to build them up from there, slowly introducing what am I supposed to be looking for? What conditions and effects am I looking for from this position? That's how we build them up. So yeah, from day one, we will start them. Okay, we're going to start on the feet. We're going to play a hand fighting game now. Your job is just to get more hands on your opponent than they have on you. Ready, set, go. And then you will start to very, very quickly, as long as you've given them the right amount of information, as long as you've got their intention and attention set in the right places, you see some pretty interesting behaviors come out straight away because they're not thinking about, does this look like the right thing, coach? Is this right, coach? Is this how it's meant to look? I don't care how it looks. Can you get 2 grips on your partner's arm? Can you attack their elbow and their wrist and hold on to that as long as you can? If you did, happy days. That's fine. That works. We're good to go from there because at the end of the day, what a movement looks like doesn't actually matter. What actually matters is the effect you're having on your partner or your opponent. And that is what we try to get our people to organize around.
so
Yeah.
that sounds like it's very adaptive in a sense to different users, different body types, different strength levels, because everybody's going to come up with their own path that works for their frame, right? Their frame, their muscular skeletal frame. So I guess my question would be, have you found that training in this CLA framework has also helped you build your business? And that kind of flexibility, intentionality, adaptability, do you think that those skills have transferred over to making your business more successful?
Look, I would say yes. I would say in the sense of like sometimes like in grappling, in a grappling context, but in a business context, you can sometimes think about like, we'll do this step. And then once we've done that step, we're going to move to the next step. And then we're going to go to the next step. Instead, like in a grappling context, if I've set a task goal of like, get your arm under your partner's arms and lock your hands together and hold that for 5 seconds, right? They've got a goal. It doesn't matter how it's accomplished, but if I give them a couple of little focuses to help them do that job, they're going to like be able to organize around that thing, regardless of like their body type, their partner's body type, what they're seeing, what they're feeling. If they can just manage to like focus on those goals that I've given them, those attentional focuses, if they can focus on those things, they're going to have a higher likelihood of achieving their goal. And I think in business for us as well, instead of being like, okay, we have to do X, Y, and Z in order to get this thing. We do set these rough guidelines, but okay, if we can have certain practice sessions with a certain amount of members attending for a certain amount of time, that gives us a rough guide that this practice session is a popular one and we can duplicate it across a couple of days. We'll just see how we go from there, as opposed to being like, no, it has to be this one way. We have to do this one thing. We can become more adaptable and flexible as we go. Definitely does have an application.
That's amazing. I think when you're speaking in terms of like that and applying to your business, you also have, I think jiu-jitsu makes successful people in general because of the concepts and principles that people apply through jiu-jitsu into their lives, whether it be their career or whatever it might be. But what really is interesting about this being a CLA coach for you, it must be, seeing the progress that people make by using a method where you're changing, like you're taking, so let me get this straight. I want our listeners to understand this, okay? So you're alternating the rules sometimes, you're alternating the space that you're in, right? You're alternating sometimes the time that you have to do something. You're alternating the environment around you, right? So can you get into a little more detail, the science part of that? So Frank asked a great business question, and this is more of a science question. Can you explain the science behind doing that, the constraint concept?
Yeah. Look, essentially, what we look to stick to when we're designing a practice is representative learning designs, making sure that the way we design a practice or these tasks is as close to the real thing as possible. So we don't want to have it getting too far out there where it's a bit kooky. And then what we are searching for is transfer from the practice environment to the competition or the application environment. So when people are rolling, we don't want people to do tasks that aren't going to have it's not going to make any difference, or it's not going to transfer their learning from the practice room to when they're in their live roles. We want to change those behaviors so that there's direct transfer. So we want to make sure that our practice designs are as representative as possible. There's a few rules surrounding that, but in terms of the science, it's about changing behaviors. So what we look to do is give them as many opportunities to experience those things as possible for as long a period of time. So our practices, we generally, and this is all based on my Coach Greg, his framework. He established this framework a few years ago, and it's the framework that we follow very, very closely. But we look to play the whole game every day. So what that means is every practice we will have the first third of it will be some element of the standing part of the game. The second third of it will be like some kind of like guard related slices. And then the end slice will be somewhat of pinning slices and submission slices, if that makes any sense to you. So we might come in, we get work in the standing position. We might be hand fighting, looking to get underarms. Okay, sweet. And then we'll stop, and then we're going to change the context. We'll move on to something related to the guard, might be passing and pinning. And then we might end with some pinning variation and some submission stuff. So the whole idea there is we're just trying to like slowly, as our players come to practice, they train. Instead of them picking up moves and techniques, they're starting to become attuned to conditions and effects that they can have on their partner. So the conditions you think about conditions like behind or under your partner's arm or under their arms or elbows. We know that like getting outside your partner's elbows is a direct path to their back. Inside your partner's elbows is a direct path to their chest. Like we're just trying to attune people to these conditions and effects as much as possible so that as they keep playing the game, they start to see this specifying information in terms of, is someone underhookable from this position? Can I get under or behind their knees from this position? Can I get access to the back from this position? So what's happening is they start to pick up this information as they keep playing the game. They get better and better and better at seeing those affordances or seeing those opportunities for action. And that's how we build that skill into those players. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it actually sounds like a fun class that you must run because everything's a game, right? And people love games. Here's this game, and they're micro games. They're slices. That's what you call them, right?
Yep.
Slices, and each slice represents a different part of the game. I think that's fascinating. And it seemed just from hearing this, I've never done this, but it feels to me like you're going from the traditional, very tactical, step by step to a more strategic, framework minded, fundamental minded strategy based on the conditions that life is throwing you, that this partner is throwing you. That's what it feels like to me that you're trying to say. I don't know if I'm internalizing that
Yeah,
correct.
you're right there. Like we're wanting them to become attuned to certain information, to be able to be like adaptable and flexible, and very dexterous, so they can change on the fly. They don't have to like spend too much time thinking about what to do. They can see and act like that. Back to that perception and action that I was talking about before. We want our players to be able to see and act in the moment. And what that does is it creates what feels like when you train with someone who trains that way, they feel like they're just doing everything really fast. They're not doing things fast. It's just there's no buffering because they're not thinking about the moves that they have to do next. They're just seeing and acting the whole time. So yeah, it is very fun. It's tiring, but it's very, very fun because there's no stopping. There's no sitting and talking. I might talk for 2 minutes at a time and then be okay, ready, set, you understand what I'm asking you to do, ready, set, go. And then in terms of like the constraints, our whole point is it's not necessarily positional sparring. There is a difference between the two things. We're looking to like use the constraints like levers in terms of like, if I'm looking to get them to focus their attention in a certain area, if I know a solution, if you think about something like a knee cut, okay, like that's a very well-known guard pass. I don't teach a knee cut, but I might constrain and set up a situation so that going between your partner's knees is a very, very, very powerful solution to the problem that I'm giving you to solve. And that's the constraints that we might pull. It's okay, top player, you can't go outside the legs in this situation. You have to go between the two knees in this situation. Bottom player, you're going to look to keep them from getting here. And there's a bunch of different ways we can change the constraints. Those are the levers that we get to pull. And that's where the science comes in and the skill comes in as a coach is how can I set them enough problems that they can skillfully learn to adapt and become skillful in solving those problems in those areas that I'm getting them to look at.
So it's almost like some of your students discover the move on their own. Kind of
100%.
like the Socratic method of teaching. I'm not going to tell you, you're going to discover.
Look, and Frank, 1,000%. And there's a little bit of a misconception in our community where it's like if you're a CLA coach or an eco coach or an eco bro, as we're getting called a little bit, that our coaching is just like just go figure it out, not just go figure it out. It's a very involved process where my job is to create a learning environment for you that I can put you in a position that if I give you just the right amount of like space to explore, where you're going to discover solutions for yourself, as long as I keep the challenge point at the right amount, as long as you're not getting defeated too often. So your emotional state changes where you become upset and you don't want to search anymore. As long as I can get these search parameters just right for you to search, we know for a fact based on the research that the transfer effect is much, much higher and it might last much, much longer when people discover these solutions for themselves. And it also leaves space for, if my body type's a certain way, a traditional, like, I don't know, a knee cut might not be available to me necessarily. But if I can get between the knees and get access to the hips or shoulders afterwards, and I've done it in a way that suits my body type, that's perfect. That's all we want to happen. And it leaves a lot of space for that.
Yeah, I think do you sometimes see your white belts start rolling like black belts?
Yeah.
You know, because 20 years ago when I first started jiu-jitsu, everything was about learning this technique at white belt and this technique at blue belt, and these techniques are for purple belts.
Yeah.
But thankfully times have changed. We're in modern times now where people realize that you can learn anything at any time, right?
Yeah.
So that's what's great about this. I think if you look at how all of these things work and all of the principles that are applied here, you start to actually think about how this can apply even like leadership positions for like workplaces. I think a lot of bosses would love being able to have an opportunity to learn some of these skills where they have to manage many people. And also situate like sales teams, offices, even medical professions where they're a community of medical professionals that have to communicate with each other. So I think it's a great concept. Can you give our listeners a little insight into what you think about that?
Look, I totally agree. We've been using the CLA for a few years now, and what we've been really cool to see is that we've got a few professionals in our training room who have taken that and started to use the CLA in their own workplaces. So we have a member now, he was working in teaching, or he was running training for HR departments in his company that he worked at, quite a big size, and he started adapting the CLA to train those HR people. We've got another person who's like a teacher the member of ours. He's a teacher. He teaches manual arts and certain things in Australia. And he's started using the CLA to teach manual arts in a high school setting. I think what's important is like every individual is an individual and everyone has their own intrinsic dynamics of what makes them an individual. And I think the more that we try to squash people into these jars, like to fit certain molds, I think you take away a lot of what makes someone intrinsically them. That's why school systems, at least in Australia that we know of, have tended to have issues, is because we try to jam a bunch of kids into different like square pegs into round hole situations instead of like making it student centric, athlete centered. Okay. Where it's like, what does this person tend to do? What are they able to do? And how can we make things so that they're a bit able to be adaptable and use what their strengths that they have instead of making them, why aren't you like Billy, who's really good at math and who can sit here for 45 minutes straight? Why can't you do things exactly like him? Because not every kid's the same. So I think this style of coaching and learning, it allows for that adaptability. It allows for people to be dexterous and adaptable and change, but it also allows for every type to try to like fit themselves. And how do I say, not everyone has to be the same. And it's not a bad thing if we're different. I think it's a good thing. And the more we are open to that, it's only a good thing.
Well, Gino, as a teacher myself, I'm a high school teacher. This totally hits home because high school traditionally is one type of environment that very well suits some of the population and does not suit other of the population. I see a lot of application for this in education. Seems like it has a lot of value in other fields.
Teaching careers, right?
Yeah. And that's what we're doing, right? We're trying to change. We're trying to help them adapt to new behaviors. We're trying to teach them new things. It's like why I think the issue is quite often that the material that's trying to be taught is more important than the people who are getting it taught to. And I think it's like if we switch that relationship around where it's like it should be student centric, athlete centric instead of the other way around where it's like, this is my methodology and this is what's most important. And if you can't adapt to this, you fail. We should be able to change that. It should be the other way around. It's like, how can we get through to this person? How can we help them adapt behaviors to this situation? What way can I get through to them best?
Yeah. Just so our listeners know how much this type of approach has really been ingrained in our society. I looked up about, kind of a few different articles, and I saw a video about training people for active shooters. So they set up scenarios in a school setting, and they have an active shooter, and they use a lot of this CLA approach in how they handle it, and it helps them to decision make and problem solve. To that level, that was eye-opening too. Have you heard of this?
We actually have, it's called Alice training in our school, and it's all situational based. They actually make us act out what we would do they give us guidelines, like Gino talks about. We have guidelines, and they say, okay, we're going to change up scenarios, and we want to see what you would do in the different scenarios. And
Yeah.
now I understand I never even made that connection, but that is CLA, 100%.
Yeah, 100%. And look, it is in terms of like being a coach, it's a much more, I would say, involved process. You have to become, especially in terms of the journey for me as a coach, I had to change get a much, much deeper understanding of how I saw grappling. I'm not just seeing it and like this cool technique, that cool move. Now you have to like, what is actually involved? What are the things that are occurring? It's a very, very, it's an in-depth process if you want to get very good. And that's why I'm fortunate to have an excellent coach. I'm fortunate to have other coaches that I can speak to get advice and to bounce ideas off. Because what we're trying to do, and it's across, I know that the police officers, at least over here, I started to implement that in some training aspects. I believe in the military as well, a lot of pro sports teams. But what we're trying to do is, if you think about it, if we set up a scenario as a coach, and it could be across any field really, if I've set like let's just say like this circle here I've set, this is like in this circle is a bunch of potential solutions to the problems that we've set. What we're trying to do as a coach here is the expert area comes in. If I know in this circle that the solution space is probably going to be like this little area over here, that's where the most viable solutions to the problems that I've set are going to be. Our job as a CLA coach is to just give enough in terms of how I set your attention and intention. I'm just going to set your search space just to be here, just to keep you in those boundaries, just to like give you enough guidelines to search based on what I've said to do. I think the misconception is that as a CLA coach, I'm setting a problem here and I'm just leaving you, all right, your search space is this whole circle. Figure that problem out, and I turn my back and I let you figure it out on your own. That's not what CLA coaching is. CLA coaching is, it's in terms of like the dedication and the time, it's very, very intentionally structuring practices around solutions and problems that we set. So it does take some time. It does take some adapting, but there's, to your question before, Frank, there's plenty of places that I can point you in and point the listeners in terms of like, if you just want to like, what is the CLA? How can I apply it? Is there things that I can listen to? There's a ton of information out there. Absolutely.
That would be great. And Jason, maybe he can send you the links. Maybe Gino will send you the links, and then you could include them on this podcast somehow. That would
Yeah.
be great for our listeners to be able
Yeah,
to
we
get
can put
more.
them. We can put them in the description at the bottom of the description. Yep.
That would be great. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Frank, do you have any more questions in terms of do you want to move on to takeaways, or do you have anything else for Gino?
Just one more thing. I just think that this is a point that you had last time we talked, Jason, that I feel like CLA would be great for people with injuries and people with special needs. Have you had any experience with that, Gino?
Both. Look, all work that we do is scalable. So we can scale the intensity up, we can scale the intensity down in terms of like partner switching, task switching, environment, so time, all those kind of things can be changed to make sure that we can cover the needs of those individuals. In terms of like special needs, I have ADHD. I might be the Hodge of Grace. You have ADHD, who knows? But we have a few guys with some learning disabilities in the room, some attention issues in the room and whatnot. We find that instead of like just dropping a bunch of information on people, this style of learning is excellent because it just gives them the basic guidelines and areas to play in and just like go experience it and go and do the work. In terms of like disabilities or especially returning to injury, a ton of times where it's like, okay, you can't do certain aspects, but we're going to like constrain you from like, okay, Bob's just returning from a knee surgery. Okay, Bob, you're going to do your guard passing, but you're only going to do it from certain aspects. We're going to like make sure that we can keep weight off that knee. Bottom player, you're only going to look to like get access to like outside your partner's legs with your legs. So you're going to look to get to a close. We can constrain it and make it work in certain ways that we can keep the endangered or the returning from injury limbs very, very safe, but still give both players a good experience and opportunity to learn.
This is just
talk about jiu-jitsu for everyone.
Yeah. For the people who say jiu-jitsu is for everyone, this actually makes that possible, right?
Yeah, look, for me, I've been grappling for a long time now. Jiu-jitsu is for anyone, but it's not for everyone. Like obviously some people just, they're not going to want to do it, right?
True.
Our job is to make it, if you want to try this weird sport, because it is super weird, if we can all agree it's super weird, you want to try it out, I'm going to create a platform that anyone can try it out. Literally anyone can try it out. And we've had like 70-year-olds in our practice sessions. We've had like very small young people doing it. We've had people with we've had the whole spectrum of people in there. Do they all last? No, because that's just the nature of it. But it's not for everyone. But you want to have it so that anyone can try it and anyone can experience it. And I honestly feel like CLA does a great job of that because they're not having to conform to a certain style or way of moving or way.
How do you gauge the intensity, Gino? I'm just kind of like imagining in my head a drill where you say you give the constraints and they start applying the technique to the training partner, like maybe I'm trying to pass the person's guard. How do you gauge the intensity of the person that's playing guard? Because they may resist too much or not enough. So how do you gauge that intensity?
Jason, I never put a number on it.
Okay.
A number is arbitrary. If I say, okay, Frank and Jason, you guys are together, just go 60%. Frank's 60% might be Jason's 475%. There's no way to like really measure those things. So firstly, partner selection. I'll try to like partner people up who are they have the similar goals in mind, or do you know what I mean? So I've started saying this in our room recently, like get a partner who matches your intent. Okay. So it's like if I have a 21-year-old blue belt who wants to win competitions and a 45-year-old father of 4 who's only there 2 days a week and just wants that, they probably don't align so much. So try to align with someone who matches your intent. Secondly, the other way we manage intensity is very much through time. So this is another thing that my coach Greg is big on, and I've adapted as well, is the shorter a time frame, just say we're going to play a guard passing slice like you just mentioned, Jace, the shorter the time frame, the more intense it's going to be. So if I set that for 2 minutes, you can be rest assured they're going to go like bats out of hell. But what we generally do is we set 6 to 10 minute slices. You can't blast yourself. I mean, you might be able to if you have unbelievable cardio, but what we find, especially in our room, that the longer the slice is set for, they have to moderate themselves to be able to last out that slice. And then it comes down to, lastly, for me, I've started saying this a lot more in our room, is if you are just in the room to go 100% just to get wins, that doesn't equate to learning. What we want to do, what learning is, and the process that we believe learning is in our room, is that it's trial and error. So you want to be going at a pace that you can be cognizant of the solutions you've attempted, and then have enough space or awareness to be like, okay, that didn't work. This next time I'm going to try to do this differently. I'll try to do that differently. If you can't be aware of what your partner is doing to you or what you're trying to do to your partner, you're going too hard. The goal isn't to win. The goal is to try a bunch of different solutions and then see what works. And if something works, try to replicate that again and again.
Yeah, that's interesting. Matching people with intent versus matching them with skill, skill versus intent, So, because it's a challenge sometimes as a BJ coach if you have a large room of different people with different sizes, skills, abilities, limitations, and you have to manage a lot of different things. So, matching people up by intent is actually a really good strategy, right? Is that what you try to do when your class is very dynamic?
Yeah, look, we typically can have like up to 40, 45 people on the mat at a time in a session. So like it is pretty tricky trying to I can't individually partner everyone up because that'll be like 10 minutes of my time. And that's 10 minutes that they've lost in their session of me just trying to work out who should go with who. So generally, I'll most of the time let them get partners, and then I'll just make sure that they're going to match your intensity, they're going to match your intent, your reasons for being here kind of thing, and let them kind of self-organize around that. Generally, they'll just go with close to the same skill. Sometimes I might even say go to close with someone who's close to your skill as well, but they will generally organize in that way themselves. And then what I will do if I'm noticing certain partnerings aren't working or I don't like it, as practice is going on, I'll be like, okay, John, can you switch with Trevor? Billy, can you switch with Sarah? Just to make it work out a little bit more, if that makes sense. The difference will be, though, we do have a pro class that we run a couple of times a week. I will intentionally set the partnerings up in that pro class because I'm looking at each athlete individually, and it's based on what they need or what I feel they need in those particular sessions.
Okay, so there's a lot continuous evaluation with that too, right? I mean, you're always evaluating progress to be able to know who you're matching people up with. So that must be challenging, that part of it.
Well, but I think that's my job, right? Like that is my job. But my job is to know we have for our area, we have a good sized gym, like 350 plus members, and it's for out in Brisbane. That's a okay sized gym. It's my job as a coach to know as best I can, especially the athletes who are serious, but even the hobbyists. I want to know them all well enough that I know, what are they looking to work on? What do they need to be working on? What are they going to get best out of this session? How can I give them intention to keep driving the next 6 months? That's basically my job. It's not just where we used to think it was getting to training. I've watched a YouTube video on my way to training. I'm going to tell them a way to do this rolling Kimura that doesn't make any sense because I watched it on my way to training. That's like 2010, 11 spec. It's 2025 now. Now I have to be a professional. I have to do this and treat it as a profession.
Awesome. Gino, you have changed today you have made me a better coach. So thank you.
Wow. Yeah.
So Frank, can you got anything more? You got some takeaways for us?
The only negative thing I could say is you've given me too many things to unpack on I always do a wrap up and I can't even fit all of this into a wrap up, all the great wisdom that you gave us. But I'm going to start by saying something you just mentioned, but I thought was very inspirational in the beginning. You're like, oh, when I was a two-stripe white belt, I knew this was what I wanted to do. I knew this was going to be my life, and I went for it. I think that for anybody listening out there is just sheer inspiration of When you find your passion, you need to chase it. And even though that sounds cliche, here's a person right there. You're looking at Gino, two-stripe white belt. He said, "This is my thing, and I'm going to stick with it, and I'm going to make this my life." And he did. So I just think that's just, you started out with something very inspirational. I really, really enjoyed learning about CLA. I think this is revolutionary from the way that you really articulated it very well. And I know this is not a sales pitch, but you sold the idea very well. I see the value in it in CLA. You talked about experiential learning, the importance of real world learning, making learning fun by giving it different slices and different games. You talked about creating opportunities to change behaviors. If that's not one of the best little snippets of language that I've heard about education in any form, creating opportunities to change behavior is really what anybody who's trying to teach somebody else should have at the front of their mind. And I'm definitely, as a teacher, walking away with that in my mind. I love that. I like the way you clarified the misconceptions that CLA is not laissez-faire. Hands off, guys. Here's the challenge. Have at it. It's a much more thoughtful process where you're the captain and you're trying to help them navigate the shoals and you're giving them some guidelines. It's a very guided process of helping them have an experience of self-discovery. Love that. It's a tool that can be used in any profession. And I'm just letting you know, Jason said this is going to make him a better coach. I'm telling you, just this conversation here is going to make me a better teacher because I'm going to look more into the CLA and I'm going to really try to slowly, incrementally bring that into my classroom so that my students who don't like being in a classroom can like it more.
Yeah.
I like the way you talked about scalability, flexibility. Also, I just wanted to do a shout out. Your philosophy is my philosophy. There is a place for everybody to try jujitsu. If you could find the right gym, if you want to try it, you should definitely try it. Find the right gym with philosophy like yours. We have a great culture in our gym too. Stop by, men, women, older people, younger people, come by a BJJ gym. It can certainly enhance your life and your career. A couple of other little things that you said that just, I love the way you phrased this. Get a partner who matches your intent. That's genius. Not matches your weight, not matches your belt, matches your intent. I've never heard it said that way. And that is a golden nugget. I love that because it's true. There are some big, monstrous people that I love to roll with because they have the same intent. I just think that's great. I thought it was really clever that you said the shorter the time frame, the more intense. So if you want to control intensity, and this is something I could even do in group projects and learning, I thought that was a great takeaway. And the last thing you said that I really wanted to repeat was not only in jujitsu, in anything, if you're trying to win 100% of the time, you're not learning. Instead of trying to win
Yeah.
100% of the time, give yourself some space to take some chances, to lose, to win, to learn. And that is something that every business person, every professional can apply starting tomorrow, that framework. So I skipped a lot in my notes because I have so many notes, but I tried to hit the great things that really impacted me. And this is one of the this is definitely an interview I think our listeners are going to listen to twice. I do. So thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom with us, being so articulate. Our listeners are going to get a great deal from this. And it just shows that going global pays, right, Jason?
Yeah, this is like an international episode for everybody today. So I appreciate this so much, Gino. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
Look, guys, I just want to say, firstly, again, thank you. Any opportunity to talk about coaching, to talk about the CLA, talk about grappling, talk about anything, I really appreciate it, especially the opportunity to try to like explain what I believe. I think getting in the habit of like actually verbalizing and trying to tell other people what you believe in a way that is effective and non-judgmental and with an open mind it's a skill that I'm trying to work on. So I really, really appreciate that opportunity from you guys. I hope I didn't, to anyone who listens to this and who is a CLA expert, don't come at me. It's a skill I'm trying to work on, but I want to say thank you very much. Also, if anyone has any questions, any queries, I'm more than happy to try to answer those questions. Again, My coach is Coach Greg Souders at Standard Jiu-Jitsu. He is, I owe a lot of my success as a coach to him. But yeah, check him out on socials. I'm happy to pass on links to any information that I can. But again, gents, I really appreciate the time.
And if you're ever in Massachusetts, you have to come and visit us and roll with us. We would love that.
Would love to. That'd be great.
All right. It's a
I'm
community,
older now.
right?
I'm 40, nearly
Come up
42, so don't expect too much.
I'm not sure if you want to come up to Boston right now,
I'm
but it's very
58,
cold in
so
Boston right now. Yeah.
yeah, it's freezing. Yeah. All right, guys. So listen,
All
thank you
right.
to
Thanks,
our
All
guys.
right. Thanks,
listeners.
Gino.
Listeners, please share this with anybody that you can think can get some benefit from it. Keep commenting, keep getting back to us. It's a great community. We appreciate you all. And once again, thank you so much, Gino. Take care, everybody. Peace out.
Peace out.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Well, there you have it. As we wrap up today's episode, let's take a moment to reflect on the powerful connections we've explored between the art of Jiu-Jitsu and your career. In your workplace and in Jiu-Jitsu, you learn to adapt and navigate challenges. So remember that persistence and the courage to embrace the lessons that you learn are the keys to your growth both on the mat